Good afternoon, everybody. This will call to order the August regular scheduled board meeting of the Commissioners of the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District. We'll begin with a roll call. Vice Chairman Thompson. Commissioner Hood.
Present.
Commissioner Barnes.
Present.
And Chairman Pantazis is present, so I believe we have a quorum. We'll move forward to adopting of the agenda. Commissioners, have you had an opportunity to review the agenda? And if so, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. The agenda is adopted. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which has been previously circulated a week in advance of the meeting for everyone's time to review. Commissioners, are there any items that you would like to remove from the consent agenda?
No, sir.
Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the items within the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is now passed. Now we can move into old business. Any old business? Oh, awfully quiet today.
We just getting started.
That's fine. I'm fine with quiet.
Mhm.
Well, you move a meeting, Chairman, so.
All right. No need to dilly dally. Okay. All right. No, hearing no old business, I'll move into new business. Any new business?
I have a few items I'd like to share.
All right.
Okay. So, good afternoon, Commissioners, Attorney French, all that are present, those on Zoom today. Just want to share that on July 26th, we hosted an event for Secretary Fudge to present an award to HABD in the city of Birmingham on the Choice Neighborhood $50 million grant. So we're very excited about that. And so we are in a process right now meeting with the CNI HUD team to identify time to meet to talk about next steps and initiatives. So we're very excited about moving that forward. I also want to share that on tomorrow, we're having a team building meeting at Oak Mountain. So we'd like to invite our commissioner to come if you can, and just taking some time to enjoy the staff and just present some updates of things that were going on within the agency. And one other item I'd like to share is I'm excited to say that we've done a few hires over the last 2 weeks. And so we have 2 hires that are here today. We actually have 3. We have 2 that we're going to do a presentation on. I want to just have them to be introduced because there are times that they will have to do a presentation for the board in the absence of their supervisor. So we thought it'd be pleasant to just introduce them to the board at this time. So as excited as we all are to have them aboard, the supervisors are overly excited, so they want to have the honor to introduce their staff. So I will ask Ms. Baker to come forward to introduce her new team member.
I'd like to introduce Mr. Desmond Harris to stand up. He is a graduate of A.H. Parker High School.
He is a graduate, Mr. Desmond Harris. He is a graduate of A.H. Parker High School. He is local of Birmingham, born and raised. He has returned to Birmingham. He served 21 years in the U.S. Air Force and he retired honorably. And after that, he has spent the last 21 years in a financial capacity, all in roles focused on improving the communities. And 9 of those years were working with a housing authority.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Mr. Ken Foreman, Director of Public Safety.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Roger Malone. He's in the back there. Mr. Malone is the Community Safety Assistant in Public Safety's office, and he's a proud veteran, Army veteran with honorable discharge. Experience as a Department of Corrections officer, retired Birmingham police officer of 27 years, Jefferson County Sheriff's Office deputy for 5 years, a local pastor of a church for 33 years. He holds a bachelor's degree from Miles College, and he currently is one semester away from obtaining his master's degree from Liberty University. And he's also a proud husband and father of 5 children. So Mr. Roger Malone.
Welcome.
Would you want him to approach?
If you want to say a few words, he's welcome to.
He
And to
probably
Mr.
would like to speak. He's a pastor.
And Mr. Harris, you have the honor as well if you choose to.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Pat, if you come to the microphone, please.
Thank you so much for giving me this privilege. I just want to say that I am so happy to be aboard, and I come to bring my experience with me.
Thank you for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris declined, so we'll move forward.
I would. too.
That's all right. We'll get to talk a lot, Mr. Harris. Don't worry.
So that's all the new business I have, Chairman.
All right. Well, happy to have everybody on board. Thank you for those introductions. It's great to have some new team members. All right. Any other new business we need to talk about?
I do want to say one thing because someone told me I needed to. I'm excited to say we had a young lady that came to the board. She had did an internship and she did really good with it. And I gave her a scholarship to real estate school, and she passed her state exam just yesterday with flying colors. So I wanted to announce that because I'm so proud of her, and she really does have a testimony. And not only that, it speaks to the resources that were provided to her to be able to go off and get a bachelor's degree, also to be able to get an internship and then go to real estate school. These were through resources that was provided to her through HABD. And so I'm honored to be a part of an organization that's able to provide these resources to the residents. So.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that information. Yeah.
All right. Hearing no further new business.
That's it.
Okay. Let's move on to finance and accounting. I believe we have one item, the presentation of cumulative low-income housing finance report for the period ending on July 31st, 2023.
Melanie Baker, CFO.
Hello. I am proud to present a report from our Yardi system. This is, it was tweaked, I will admit, in a few places as we are perfecting the presentation, but this is directly from our system. So the PTD is paid to date in the month of July. Then they've got the budget for July, and then you have the variance. And then you'll see at the top, you have the percentage of change. And then what'll be really nice about this budget is it'll show the year-to-date actual expenditures. So it's the same number since it's the first month, but next month you'll see that number include July and August for next month. And then you'll have your year-to-date budget, which would be for the 2-month period next month, but this month you see one. And then the far right-hand column is the annual budget. And so what'll be really nice for this presentation, if we have a contract that we pay out one time a year, we'll be able to see that we didn't exceed the annual budget, but we might have exceeded the monthly budget or the year-to-date budget, but we can bring out that it's just a one-time annual expense. So that'll be really nice in this budget. The other thing is the presentation is slightly different. And the reason why the presentation is slightly different is this is a accounting GAAP HUD type of presentation. The one we were presenting before was an Excel and it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid. So you will see some slight differences, but not a lot of differences. So I wanted to take a brief moment to bring your attention to the high level variances. So on page 1 with the revenue, it does not include the 1410 or 1406 capital fund portion of the operating budget because HUD considers that a transfer in. And so that is, it's right there under non-operating items. That is a HUD presented number. And so it is negative because it's an income. And so also in that category, what you will see as positive and negative numbers coming in those categories would be like a casualty loss, and or repairing a unit that burned. You would see the income coming in from the insurance company as a credit, and then you would see as without the credit, just a debit number for the expense of repairing that unit. And so that is kind of a HUD presentation account structure. And also, if you'll see at the bottom of this, you'll see the income coming in from Park Place, Tuxedo, Park Place 1 and 2, and the Tuxedos and the Glenbrook. In your spreadsheet presentation before, that was in your income. Now I have it down at the bottom. And the reason being is A, it's a HUD type of presentation, and B, this is a pass-through subsidy. We're not paying for operations of these units. We are just collecting the subsidy from HUD, and then we're paying out on what they've invoiced us. But there's various times of the year that we look at how those properties are performing, and we might pay them more subsidy based on their performance going in and out. We kind of get even with them and do evaluation. So this actually excludes that from the upper numbers, which will give you a more realistic view of how the public housing AMPs are operating by removing that and putting it kind of at a below line item. So, and then we did have the other item I wanted to pick out that will be different is if you look down at the maintenance and operations, I gave you a little more detail in that area. And one of the flexibilities that'll be nice with this new presentation is we can unhide fields if we have a larger expense that we need to bring to the board's attention. So it'll be really nice for presentation purposes. Then the other last thing is you do not see you will not see the flaw in all of this presentation is that if we get an invoice on the last day of the month, you will not see that. So if I get an invoice dated on June 30th that is mailed, July 31st, that's mailed to HABD, a lot of times we do not receive that invoice until, August 4th or 5th. And I've already pulled the report and submitted it. And so what'll be nice is you'll still be able to see it in the year to date for any invoices that kind of come in late and be able to see the cumulative total. Do you have any questions?
Commissioners, any questions? I'm excited. We're finally leveraging Yardi a little bit for this. So I think hopefully less manual entry and more, automation. I think that's all great. Hopefully it makes your job easier. And I think it's good for us to see it in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to rental assistance programs, the approval of Section 8 management program certification or CMAT.
Andrew Drake, Director of Rental Assistance Program.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to present this action item at today's meeting. Today, I have one request for board approval, which is the approval of the Section 8 Management Assessment Program, which is CMAP, certification for fiscal year end June 30th, 2023. All PHAs administering the Housing Choice Voucher Program, also known as Section 8, are required to review and submit self-certifying scores. The annual submission of CMAP is a monitoring tool used by HUD to determine how well a PHA is administering its program for said fiscal year. This year, we are certifying to a score of 82%, which is standard performer. As you are reviewing with the CMAP comparative view of scoring, you can see the variances in the prior year's submissions and this year. Fiscal years 2022, 2021, and 2020 received waivers through the CARES Act, and we were able to carry over our prior scores for those years. The score range for standard is 60 to 89%. We are standard, however, it was not a situation where we barely met those standards to become standard rating. To hopefully answer some questions in advance, I will discuss how we got to a decreased score and what we are doing now to increase our score for the future. It's not on. The org restructuring process weighed heavily on my department. The staff budgeted positions were cut from approximately 35 to 22. Although budgeted at 22, we were not at that time fully staffed, and sometimes approximately 14 employees. And as a result, we had to employ some temporary employees in vacant positions. Temporary employees that were hired were not able to perform the specialized skills that were needed within our department. And as a result, the permanent staff that we did have and do have were assigned to additional duties, and we had to change the focus from other tasks to specifically leasing new vouchers. As you will see, we were able to obtain 20 points for indicator 13, which is lease up. And at that time, this was the most important focus because it ensured that we would receive the same level or greater funding for this new fiscal year. So as a result, we were able to successfully expend 98.8% of our budget authority with those changes. How we are working to increase our scores. As you can see, we received 0 points for indicators 12 and 5. These are closely related to both of the categories that were all or none situations. So in those situations, there wasn't an in-between. You either got all points or you received a score of 0. In June of 2022, we procured and signed a contract for inspection services. Their level of produced work was not up to our standards or regulations. And as a result, we did not renew their contract. We procured a new inspection contractor through a piggyback from another PHA. This contract was recently executed. We have worked with this new contractor in the past, and as you can see on the comparative view, we received all points in those 2 indicators. Relative to timely annual reexaminations, we were able to realign our budgeted positions from 22 through the org restructuring to 37 to support the need of my department with the new fiscal year 2024 budget. Although we do not have all of these positions filled to date, once they are filled, we are confident that we will be able to timely process all requests received and those points for those CMAP indicators. One of our new positions that we were able to add back to our budget this year, although not filled today, is a compliance specialist who will review and analyze samples of work performed throughout the entire fiscal year. This was very instrumental in the past, and I'm sure it will continue to be instrumental in supporting higher scores for the future. So I know there are possible questions. If you have any, feel free to ask.
Commissioners, any questions?
So what is your current staffing? as of today?
Today we have 12 vacant positions.
So you're in the process now of interviewing and have.
Yes, ma'am. So right now we are interviewing. We received some lists of qualifying candidates. And so we're going through those and scheduling some interviews.
So how many do you have presently?
How many I have in the office?
You said yes. That's-
I think it's 19.
So you really need to be operating, you're saying off of 33 people?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions? And I think, we went through some of this in committee, so I don't want to rehash too much of it, but for commissioners that weren't in the committee meeting. Obviously, it looks like if you boil it down, there's kind of two parts. This isn't a bad score or anything. It's just not as good as maybe we have had. And so we want to
Right.
keep to
It's
that
not our
standard.
goal.
Right. And we can do better. And it sounds like the two main reasons are a contract that didn't pan out
Right.
and the effect of a reorg that maybe didn't work the way we, intended it to.
Correct.
And so we fixed the contract situation.
Yes.
We believe based on previous results. And now we're working on fixing the staffing and personnel issue. Do you feel sitting here today that even with the sort of gap in personnel that you still have, that you're going to be able to get closer to the ideal score?
We're getting closer as it relates to the annual reexaminations. We were a few months behind, but now we're only like a month and a half behind. So which is good, which they do provide a 2-month cushion, HUD does. So I feel confident that, yes, the score would be different for the next year.
What I'd ask is that we continue to get updates on kind of the not at a super granular level, but every,
Those two.
as things move forward, just kind of keep us in the loop on this. If there's something else that can be done to help, get you where you need to go, we want to be able to help you with that. But we appreciate you getting ahead of it before even this meeting. I think, you had already put together these sort of processes. So I think that's great to hear.
Thank you.
I didn't have one question.
Sure.
What is the deconcentration? I say that we
Yes.
consistently get 0 on that.
Yeah, so that's a bonus indicator. One thing that we put in place to help us get towards obtaining those points is moving families out of poverty level, basically. And so the small area FMRs or fair market rents, which is what we currently have, we have, and we also have our payment standard raised to 120%. That gives families that find a property in certain zip codes, they're able to request higher rents. And so now it's more of the mindset of having our people understand that you can move into these areas because now you have the backup as it relates to the subsidy to support where you would like to move. And so with that, we have what we call a voucher estimator. With that voucher estimator, we actually list all those zip codes that they get, and it tells them the subsidy that would be equivalent if they moved in those zip codes.
So we just don't have anybody moving into those zip codes much.
We do, but the way that the points work is you have to show a certain percent of increase from families from 2 fiscal years to the current fiscal year. It has to be at a certain percentage of increase. So we definitely have increased. It's just not at the rate that we would like it.
Okay.
In order to get those indicators, it has to be at a certain percentage.
Understood.
And so we do have more than we did before the SAFMRs, but it's not enough to obtain those deconcentration bonus points.
Thank you.
And I also want to add, even though this self-certification is due on an annual basis by HUD, we've implemented plans to do a self-evaluation more frequently so that we can know where we are throughout the year.
It's also good. Any other questions? Well, thank you for answering all the questions in advance. Let's see, we need to probably vote to approve this, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Are there, hearing no other questions or concerns at this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the CMAP certification as proposed.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, commissioners,
passes.
as always.
Thank you. Next up is human resources. We have the approval to revise the human resource policy related to travel.
Beth Embry, Chief of Policy.
Good afternoon, commissioners.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
So the purpose of this board action, this request is to obtain approval to revise the travel policy. It's under HR because the policy that we do have currently is part of the Human Resources Policy Manual. But I had some other staff to help refine the policy. So the revisions didn't happen out of HR. So just as a FYI. In any case, HABD maintains a travel policy to ensure that we expend funds in a sensible and economic manner for travel for employees, board members, and others that might travel on the agency's behalf. For instance, we have some resident leaders here today, and sometimes, for instance, residents travel on behalf of HABD. It could be to a conference or a training or to visit another PHA, anything like that. So anyone traveling on behalf of HABD, regardless of the source of funds, is subject to the HABD travel policy. And a review of the current travel policy indicated that we had some items that should be in there that weren't in there, and it didn't match well to the recommended hub policy, but also the state policy on travel. And so both of those were referenced to make the revisions and bring our policy into line with where we should be. And in the board actions, obviously you have the full policy, but in the board action, I did highlight four of the key revisions. One was clarifying the distinction between local and out of area travel, and then what HABD would and would not compensate an employee or a traveler for, which goes into the second bullet, which is we updated the per diem policy for trips outside of Jefferson County that aren't overnight. So for instance, if someone had to spend 9 hours up in Huntsville or going to and come back to Huntsville, they would be entitled to a per diem for that, whereas before we didn't have that in the policy. Clarifying when a traveler may depart and return. And so for that one, often if you're going to a conference, it's typical to go the day before and come back the day after. Our policy didn't have any guidelines on that. So it wouldn't be out of policy for me to travel 2 days before and come 2 days after, whereas that would be obviously an unnecessary expensive funds if the agency paid for that. And then lastly, adding limits on baggage costs, I'm sure those are reasonable, and outlining a policy for combining personal and business travel. So if you, again, traveled on behalf of HABD and either before or after had an additional couple of days of personal travel, what is our policy for treating those expenses? So implementation of this policy will keep us in compliance, like I said, with state policy, with their policy. They don't have any requirements for the PHA, but also with the federal policy, their simple policy. There's no direct economic impact on this policy. Travel budgets are approved as a part of the annual operating budget. So like the COCC, the executive office, property operations, rental assistance, they all have their own travel budgets. And so those are still, an employee still has to go through the normal process to be approved for travel. So there's no change there. And then lastly, we have the resolution, which is 12668, allowing for the revision of the travel policy, including if we catch any typos or anything like that, the authority to be able to make any minor changes to make those corrections.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Looks good to me. I'll, hearing no questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the revisions to the human resources travel policy.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And just for all those listening, we have one last item before we move into executive session, which probably will take a bit. So this is kind of the last public item that will be discussed, which is the presentation of persons desiring to speak before the board today. On my sign up list, I've got two individuals, Ms. Body and Ms. Thomas. I guess we'll start with Ms. Body.
I'd like to say good evening
Good
Good evening.
to those that have forgotten me, never met me. I'm William Body, president of Illerton Village. I wasn't planning on saying anything today, but unless I was prompted to do so. I have one question. How many handicap vehicles do we have to serve our sites?
We have one HABD vehicle for the residents. You mean?
Okay. I'm asking them.
I spoke.
Okay,
Ms.
It
Body.
sounds like we've got one vehicle.
just have one. My reason for that is asking that question is because I have resident that is, she's wheelchair bound. She had a stroke and she desired to come to the meeting today, but there was no transportation for her. My understanding that the transportation that is available is tied up for the picnic for you all. That's my question. And then my next question is, are we as the president of the sites invited to your picnic?
I'll direct both of those questions to Ms. Foster. And I'll say as to the first issue, I think anytime that a resident does need travel assistance to a board meeting, I'd like to make sure we do everything we can to assist with that. As far as the HABD planned events, I'll defer to Ms. Foster there.
So you're saying that how much notice do we have to give in order for you to have the one handicap vehicle to be available for 12 or 13 sites? Let's suppose that there's another site or 2 or 3 other sites that decide they want to come to the board meeting on that particular day. How would you accommodate that?
And I will add, we do have the Zoom option, and you're certainly allowed to participate via Zoom in any way that you would like. So that, as far as a participation standpoint, that is available. But that being said, we do love seeing guests. And so to the extent we can accommodate those via travel, I'd love for us to be able to.
And I would say, Ms. Body, if they can give us 24-hour notice, that way we can know who we need to pick up at certain sites. We can make that available for the residents. I'm not aware of the bus being tied up for the picnic, is the reason why it's not available today. So on the other question, when we have our team building, we usually have it just for staff only because we do updates as it relates to items that we want to discuss within the agency. So we kind of give that time to the staff. But we are also welcome to, meet with the residents as need to, to have discussions. We're often asked to be placed on your meetings agenda so that we can come by and have discussions if you all want to have anything to share with us. I want to share anything with you.
So you're saying I need to tell my resident. Okay.
It's that you can finish. That was just a reminder. We got 3 minutes, but you can finish.
I need to tell my resident that she needs to plan 24 hours to come to the board meeting in order to be able to have a ride.
That just helps us accommodate time in case there's other residents who need to pick up from other sites. It just helps us to do a better scheduling. It'll be helpful for us. But then I know sometimes within 24 hours, maybe I'm just saying it'll be helpful for us within that time frame. We just ask that of courtesy.
So again, we only have one handicap vehicle for 12 to 13 sites.
That's correct.
To accommodate 12 to 13 sites.
Yes, ma'am. And that's why it'd be helpful for us to get, early notice to see who'd like to attend so we can work out the transportation schedule.
Okay. Are you planning on ever getting one more vehicle, handicap vehicle?
But we can evaluate our budget to see if that can be accommodated.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
One thing I would add, Ms. Body, is if you notice that there is a greater need and you start getting wind that there's more requests than just, say 1 or 2 individuals, I think that's something that the agency would probably need to be aware of.
Okay, let me say this. I always think about the position you may end up as you serve the people. You may be young today, but one day if you live my age, you're going to get old and you won't be able to use a regular vehicle, nor even drive, or nor even have anyone to drive you around. This young lady is not a senior. She was a pharmacist and she had a stroke and now lives with us in public housing. You don't know where you're going to be. So you need to think in terms in case that happens to one of you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Body. I think that's a fair way to look at it. Ms. Thomas?
I'm Ms. Thomas, but I was not trying to speak. I just thought I was signing the roll.
Okay, well, we're happy to have you with us today. All right. Seeing no others signed up to speak today, that will conclude the public portion of our meeting. We will not be adjourned. However, we will be moving into executive session with approval of our council.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, pursuant to Alabama Code 36-25A-7, we need to move into an executive session following a roll call vote to discuss matters allowed under the Alabama Open Meetings Act. No voting will be taken on those actions, but a discussion in the executive session. I've been informed by Mr. Embry that we anticipate that the executive session will last approximately 1 hour.
So hearing that, I guess it's fine to move into executive session. So I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session followed by a roll call vote. So
moved.
Second.
all opposed, say aye.
Roll call.
And we'll do roll call. Commissioner Barnes,
Yes.
Commissioner Hood,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So we're now okay to move into executive session.
Was she showing?
This, I'm sorry, this was just to show where,
I guess I'll now entertain a motion to leave executive session if approved by council.
Yes, sir.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye by roll call. Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Hood.
Aye.
I say aye. We are out of executive session and having no more items on the agenda. I will move or entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Good.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.
thank you, commissioners. I know it's a lot, but thank you so